Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, who is our lead solutions engineer. Today, Dion will be showing you something pretty cool at the very beginning of the session, but he is here to take your questions. So if you have questions, type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. I think that's it. Just one quick note. This will be the final Wednesday webinar for a couple of weeks as we prepare for and go to DevCon next week. So let's get started. Hello, Dion. It sounds like you're there.
I am. I'm sorry, I'm making a lot of noise background here. Is my gain too high, or is it? I'm still working on that new mic.
You're still working on that new microphone. It sounds good to me. Yep.
Okay, good. It's not overly crazy. I'm clicking my mouse. Can you hear it? Can you hear it? Can you hear it?
I can hear you clicking your mouse even. It's fine. Not too loud though. All right.
Good, good. We don't want it to be annoyingly low.
I'm gonna go ahead and make you the presenter, and I'll let you know when I can see your screen. And there it is. Great.
Awesome. Yes, and thank you. Yeah, we appreciate everybody taking time out of your busy schedule. And thank you for joining us. As Dave mentioned, it is super important for us that we help you, or you help us by we'll help you by you helping us, which is put your questions into the questions area of the GoToWebinar control panel. And oh, good, we've got Sarah Mitchell with us online, which is really good because I'm going to be pointing to some documentation items.
Definitely.
And yes, we're always excited to have Sarah with us.
When Sarah's here, you get the correct answers, which makes it even better. You know?
We always like to bring someone who actually knows what they're doing on these webinars. So every once in a while, you get a little nugget of truth in what we do. So very exciting. But again, we want to make sure that we're answering your questions. Obviously, the other aspect is you can always send emails to guides@alphasoftware.com. That's GUIDES at alphasoftware.com. And by doing so, you will, we can be prepared and answer some questions and do those pieces there. So we're excited. Yeah, as Dave mentioned, DevCon's a couple weeks away, and we're getting furiously busy getting everything ready to go. So we won't be able to do our weekly webinar. But as always, we've recorded all these webinars. So if you've missed one, you can go back and watch one of our previous ones in the last couple months. They're all very current, a lot of really good content there. And we have a whole host of really good ones on there that you can check out. Well, we think they're good. I guess that's a little egotistical there. So anyway, what we're going to do today is actually, I was a special surprise guest on TransForm Tuesday yesterday. First time on TransForm Tuesday, and hopefully not the last. I'll wait to see if I get invited.
Ratings were through the roof yesterday. Absolutely.
I don't know. I might, I'll see if I get invited back. It's like, are they going to bring the show back into town? It's like, or is it Barnum and Bailey and we're shutting it down forever? So no more elephants. But we talked about yesterday a very interesting business case, and I apologize for people who have saw it yesterday. There's going to be a little bit of redundancy in terms of what I'm talking about, but I am going to dive in a little bit behind the scenes to talk a little bit more. So it is worth your while. And also, if you have questions, don't go anywhere. Get your questions in there, and I'll make sure we get to them. So the idea behind this is that we had a specific client of ours, and let me go to here. We'll go to the right one here. And this client had a very interesting business problem. They were using Alpha Anywhere to solve it. They already had an Alpha Anywhere solution. Specifically, they work with companies that are building large facilities. And part of that, you have to test all the things that go into it. So there's a huge amount of forms. It's kind of government oriented. So lots and lots of forms that need to be filled out. The data collected, the forms need to be analyzed, the data needs to be collected, the forms need to be filled out and then delivered back. And we worked with them, and they kind of showed their process of how they do it now. And it was actually much better than it was in the previous iterations, but there was a lot of opportunity for improvement. Specifically, they get a whole stack of forms, and these forms take many different formats. They need to figure out all the fields. They update they have a data-driven kind of database structure, which is kind of well done, well thought out, where they have to kind of put in all the data fields, and then they have to organize it. And then they have a front end that will allow people to collect it. And they're using things like grids and other pieces there. Then once that data comes back in, they were using Alpha reports to then export that out as reports that can be then submitted back through the process. And it worked great. They did an amazing job. They took Alpha and made it do things I'm amazed with. It was just phenomenal with Alpha Anywhere. But we were talking about how could we improve this process? Well, one of the key improvements was, well, instead of having kind of more of a desktop interface, maybe we could use TransForm out in the field as that vehicle for collecting the data, because TransForm allows you to collect signatures, all types of data, etc. And we looked at that and there was a great opportunity, but we still were faced with an issue, which was you still have this issue of that form generation. They would still have to lay out the forms and do a whole bunch of manual work. And then once you have the data, do all that work to get it back out. And it was sort of like, well, I mean, it would help, but it didn't really solve the overall issue. And so we really sat down and we spent time with them and we took it up to the top level and we said, what could we do on this whole process? And we came up with a really neat idea. It was really kind of cool. And what was neat about it, and more importantly than anything, was the fact that all the capabilities to make it happen were already built into Alpha Anywhere and TransForm. So what was envisioned was, hey, Adobe Acrobat has what are called fillable forms, which allow you to create forms and you can literally draw on their boxes to collect data. And you can actually use Adobe to collect that data. You can actually, and I'm sure many people have experienced this, where they have gotten a form from a government entity, the IRS or their state, and you get it in a PDF and you actually can literally type in the form right there in the PDF, print it out, sign it, and send it in. And so that capability is there. But obviously, and I'll show you in a moment, that's really not very viable for when you're using disconnected offline performance. So we came up with an idea. Why not continue to use the Acrobat fillable form? The other thing cool about Acrobat forms is there's an enormous amount of tools from Adobe and otherwhere that will take docs, docx's, Word documents, printed or like scanned forms, JPEGs, PNGs, and will automatically turn that into an Adobe form, including identifying where the fields are and kind of guessing at what those are. So there's this really cool kind of already out in the field capability. But now what we can do with Alpha and Alpha Anywhere and TransForm is we actually extract that data, the fields from the form. We create a TransForm representation, we put it into TransForm, deploy it to the field, and then when that data has been collected by the field with TransForm, we can take that data and then basically refill out the form with the data and export it as a filled out PDF form that's printed, ready to go. And so now we can remove a whole bunch of steps that people don't have to go in and create all the data fields. They don't have to create special reports. And we can use the off-the-shelf industry tools to create these forms, which are, drag, drop, click, all very easy to go from there. So we created that process, and I'll talk about the actual process in a moment, but let me show you kind of what it looks like. So this is an example of a PDF form in a desktop browser. And so you're going to see that you have a form, and then on top of it, you have fields: manufacturer, type, serial number, voltage, etc. And what you can do is within Adobe Acrobat, you can sit there and draw these fields out there and highlight them. It's very similar to our absolute layout technology in the PDF or in our Alpha, which we actually explored using that. Well, why not just use that? There was still some, it didn't solve the real solution of making it easy because you had to do it inside Alpha and some other elements there. But each of these are identifiable fields. Now, once you have those, then I can go, I clicked off. Can you hear me okay still, Dave? I'm sorry. Just
coming through loud and clear, man.
Okay, yeah, my USB went out for a second there. Oh. So that's all fine and good, but then if you go ahead and say, well, let's just deploy this to the field, this is what it looks like on a phone. And this is actually a shot of my iPhone. You have the regular field, and then when you type it, it's like, ugh, it's kind of, it's brutal. You can go next, forward, and stuff like that, but it's really not an optimal situation, especially when you're sitting out at a offsite, in a muddy, dirty, it's just, I'm sitting there trying to hit these little buttons, and it's just a pain, and it doesn't really lend itself to a clean process. So let's look at it when it's generated in TransForm. Now you have a situation where we can use all the power of TransForm because, for instance, when you click on something, we can have a list of people. You can use buttons here, big buttons to say, well, is it a single phase or a double phase motor? You can also use big buttons here. You can also set it up so you can use signature capture, etc. And the cool thing about that is we're able to take this form right here, read these fields, and generate something along there. Now, there's a step in there I'm going to talk about, but that's the basic premise. Now, what's cool is all this information that's collected is JSON. We can then reopen this PDF and insert that information into these fields because we have the mapping between the original form and TransForm. Very straightforward, very powerful, very easy, and it worked out really nicely, and we're moving forward with it. Now, to show you a little bit more of the details of what's going on under the covers is the following. Obviously, you create your PDF fillable form using whatever technology you want to. Either the Adobe has them, third parties have them, etc. Then using Alpha Anywhere, we can load that form and extract those fields. And I'm going to show you the commands for that. It's very cool, very easy to do. That gives you a set of fields. Now, normally what we would do is we would go ahead and take the that data and go right into TransForm, but we realized that there was a better way to handle this. And the better way to handle
Uh-oh, Dion, it sounds like we've lost your audio. Are you still there? You're definitely moving along there. Hang on a second while I text him.
Okay, I should be back.
Dion, you're back. And
yes, I'm so sorry, everybody.
I suspect you're not going to explain that a second time, right? Is that the...
No, I'd love to. I mean, where did I lose you guys? I'm so sorry about that.
You lost us.
I think I've got to look at my rig.
I think we were talking about the process of how do you get those extract Adobe PDF fillable fields into something that Alpha can deal with, into like JSON format.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to run through this real quick. And again, I appreciate everybody's patience here. So the idea is however you create that PDF fillable form, you can do it using an off-the-shelf Adobe Acrobat tool or something along those lines. Inside Alpha Anywhere is a built-in command and tool capability that will open up a PDF form and then pull out those fields. What we do is, you could, and this was my original design, we originally were going to add some kind of directions, how you name these fields, and then go right into TransForm. But we realized that was a little cumbersome. So what we actually do is insert those fields into like a staging table in the database. And then what you can do is you can then add metadata information to that to say, for instance, this field is required. This field is numeric. This field is an integer. This is text. This field's a list, and here's your selections. So what's cool is we just use a grid, and you can just sit there and edit a table and add this extra data in it. Then once we have that, we use the TransForm API to then take that and create a form in TransForm. And that goes right into TransForm. TransForm then allows you to create an instance of that for someone to fill out, deploys it to the field. Field does their updates using this nice, wonderful user interface, which again now has, for instance, lists to collect from list, validation to make sure things work there. A lot of really cool stuff there to make it nice. Now, once the person has filled all that, it goes back to TransForm Central. We can now extract that data, remap it into our database so we have it kind of stored in a format we're used to. And then we can use another built-in function to take that data, open our PDF form, the original PDF form. This is one of the key things. We're going to reopen that original PDF form and populate that data. So now we know whatever comes out the back end is going to look like what went in the front end because it's the exact same form going forward and backwards. So it allows you to make sure that the fidelity of what the person who wants that form is going to get it, gets it in the format they want. And again, as I mentioned it, they get stacks of these things, literally hundreds of forms. And some forms are in Word documents, some are in PDF, some are in here's paper. And it's just a huge amount of effort to do that. And what's nice is that this is genericized, meaning I can take any form and review it, and it's sort of the same process. I'm not having to create new data tables. I'm not having to do this. It's just, it's sort of a, and once you get into that similar process, there's other automation things we're planning on doing down the road. So that's how we achieved it. Now, the magic was twofold. One was Alpha's ability to have an API around TransForm so that I could write a script to generate my, essentially my representation of that form. So the neat thing is that this is JSON. Everything about this is JSON. My whole form definition is done in JSON. So, and there's a whole set of APIs that are available to say, take this JSON. So we actually create a JSON representation of form, put it in TransForm, it creates a new definition, and then you can start spawning individual templates out of it. The other part of it, which is very important, is Alpha Anywhere's ability to work with PDF forms. And let me go ahead and open this up real quick. Okay. And we'll go PDF. Alpha has always had an enormous amount of PDF capabilities. We've been able to create PDFs, take our reports and export them as PDF, do a whole bunch of other things like that within Alpha, and that's been for a long time. So PDF field, let's see if I can find it. And actually, and I should do it over here on the chat, is, good. Here we go. PDF fill-in fields get. Let me go ahead and look at that. And I'm going to go ahead and take this. Notice I'm using the handy dandy and I'm putting into the chat window. So you'll have it in the chat window. Is that, ooh, that's Print Genie. I wanted actually, did I hit the wrong one? There it is. I hit one too many. Let me copy that. I think it might be this one. Okay. So basically, it's a very simple form that allows you to say, point to a file on your hard drive, and then get the fields from it, and it spits out those fields. That's it, the field name and the current contact. And actually, there's you can get extended information, which gives you a little bit more information in regards to what's in there, although that doesn't, like if you could actually see what kind of fields they are in there. So there's some other nice little things from doing there. But that's it. So what's great is and what's neat is you upload this file, open it, and extract the fields, and then you insert it into that interim database. And then they can then look at the form physically and go into that database and say, okay, first name's text, last name's last name, date is text, date is a date field. So now we know it's a date field. So when we go to generate the transform output of it, what we're going to get is we're going to get a date field in transform for that specific element that we want from in there. Okay, so let's go here. Good. Just Dave, just a process check. I do see my USB thing is kind of going crazy, but
everything is coming through fine.
Yeah. Yes. Good. From an audio, that's the important stuff.
It is.
So it's doing there. There you go. There we go. Okay. Not right now. Okay. What's happening is my USB thing today. It was my mic yesterday. It's my USB today. So it's always fun. Now, here's the other field. As I mentioned, once we go through this process, we now want to take that data and export it back into this PDF form. So we have that PDF form. We saved it. We stored it. So now we can use the PDF fill-in fields merge function. Copy that and put that into my message right here. And what that does is really straightforward is we say, grab, we need some JSON. So there is a handy dandy capability that will actually read a record set and turn it into JSON, so I don't even have to worry about that. Then you give it the input file and the output file where you want it to go, and you say merge. And what it does is it opens up that original file, it grabs the JSON data, and then it does a merge of those fields and spits it back out. So now that output PDF has all those fields filled out with the mapped data. And so we have the integrity of the original form being now used as the output and the input. And again, there's a, let's go ahead and show you real quick. Just to make this even easier, you know, we have to have JSON here. So we can go to JSON. I think it's RS2 JSON is what it is. You can get a result set from a database. Result set. Okay. Where is it? To Excel. There's one. There's you will see the other ones. There we are. Right? Where is it? To JSON method. Okay, and I'm going to copy that. God, I love this copy in there. It's so much nicer. And we know that those, by the way, these will not change, so that will be good for many years to come. So in this case, what we do is we just get a result set. So we do everything we do. We connect to the database, we execute it, we get a result set. But then what we do is we just say, hey, convert that result set to JSON. Guess what? Here's my JSON. And in my script to then populate that PDF, I just pass it that JSON and I'm good to go. And it's very, very straightforward. By the way, I would use JSON object syntax because it doesn't include these brackets, which this is called JSON array syntax. This is the one I used because all I'm really doing is pulling one record, and I don't need these little open brackets because this basically says this is an array of JSON items, and this just gives you one by one each of those items here. And so if you're bringing back a single record, all you need is this, because if we go back and look at the example, you see that all we want is a curly bracket, the field, the value, and that's all we want on it. And usually you're just pulling one record and put it in there. So you want to use that JSON to object syntax record, because then you won't get the other extra like text that you don't need. And so the real magic of this thing was everything was doable because Alpha already had the functionality into it. I didn't actually have to create one new piece of functionality. My time was just spent kind of going through this a couple times, figuring out the best way to do this. The other thing my time was spent was just writing the script that would iterate through these fields and then create the commands in JSON for a template. And again, that uses all of Alpha's built-in functionality. And in fact, I used the TransForm API Explorer, and the specific one was, where it is, create new form definition. And this is the one we want to use right here, create new form definition. Because what you do is you give it this, you put in that form definition, and there's a bunch of documentation on what that looks like. And then what that does is that will actually take my JSON representation and throw it into TransForm as a new form with the definition all ready to go. And then it just needs to be submitted to the field for filling out. So again, that's called create new form definition. And we can do a follow-on. I apologize, it will have to be after, but I could show you a very simple script that would say, okay, I want 3 text fields in a TransForm, and I could show you what that script looks like, and that would give you the basis. So we'll plan on doing that when we get back from our DevCon. And so we look forward to seeing everybody there. And I could even show you there while you're there. Yeah, that's a little extra super benefit from there. So that is this. So cool business opportunity, because we took a very complex process using the combination of Alpha and TransForm. We now were able to simplify not only the results in the field, meaning how the people in the field are using it, but also the overall process to really simplify it. And so you get the best of both worlds. You get a really wonderful field result and doing it, and it really came together very nicely, and we're very excited. We're going to be spending more time kind of packaging up a lot of the things we did so more people can use it, but we want to kind of let you know that's out there, kind of spark your creativity, see if you have ideas on you might be able to do this. And the cool thing is, TransForm is so easy to use and work with that it, one other thing I just wanted to mention was that we actually, in this process, we actually create the form, but there are other methods where you can create the form on TransForm and then just submit the data into it, which we're doing other people, where you just want to take, for example, read some data out of a database. The form already exists in TransForm. We just want to create an instance with that data. There's ways to do that there. So there's many ways to skin the cat and approach that. So a lot of fun items from there. So that is TransForm PDF integration. I appreciate everybody who was at TransForm Tuesdays and spending time with us again. I hope it wasn't too redundant. With that, it's back to Dave and questions for anybody who has questions.
Questions and a request. I didn't see it this
Oh,
time
good.
around. Maybe I just missed it, but yesterday you showed taking a JPEG image of a form and using not Alpha but a PDF tool to actually convert it into a PDF. I was just wondering if you could just talk about that a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
Because that was kind of cool. I mean, it was the whole idea really cool. of here you have a paper form, so it's not even digital, just a paper form. And now, how do you turn that into an app and have it spit back out into that original paper form format? And this little tool is part of that key to that. So
yeah, okay. Let me go ahead and show you this real quick. So I froze my screen because I'm flubbing around
Flubbing around, typing in secret passwords and things, I'm sure.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, so let me open that. Okay, so let me go ahead and show. Let's see. I just want to go, and I just want to see if I can get this thing here. And okay, let's go ahead and prepare. Gosh darn it. It's so frustrating because I had this doing the other day. So.
Well, that's what they
okay,
get for
bear with
missing
me. Just a
TransForm
few more.
Tuesday. Yeah.
And now let's see. Maybe I'm logged in with the wrong username. That's maybe the problem. I could have sworn it. I'm re-signing in because what it is, there's certain formats. Okay, hold on a second, everybody.
All right. While Dion is doing that,
Yeah, if you don't mind.
If you don't mind, actually, I have a couple of TransForm questions that I'd really like to get to that I'm going to answer here.
Okay, thank you. While I get this.
Yeah, so for those who are unfamiliar with TransForm, TransForm is a separate product from Alpha, but it is part of the Alpha from Alpha Anywhere. It's part of the Alpha family. It's a no-code system for quickly building mobile applications. Unlike Alpha, we provide you an online tool for building the applications. We provide the hosting, we provide user management, we provide storage and database and all that stuff for you. And we charge a little bit differently. We do it based on a named user basis. So these applications are really for people who are part of a workforce who are going to use this on a pretty regular basis. For example, think of someone, you might be designing applications for people who are out on the field who need to collect data regularly on a mobile phone, and that's really the perfect use case, but there are other ones as well. So right now, though, we are still, about a year into Alpha Anywhere, and it's been commercially available for about 6 months or so. And it's sold, I don't know if I mentioned this, on a per seat basis. It's different than Alpha Anywhere. So instead of plunking down money for a server and setting up all the stuff, we just charge you per user. And that works out to around $35 to $40 per user per month. Sounds like a lot, but it does include the hosting, and basically it's an app that's all pre-written and off the shelf, but you still have a lot of flexibility in changing it. Anyway, if you guys would like to try out this, I'm looking for some more testers right now because we've made some changes to the onboarding process for Alpha Anywhere. In other words, what happens when you sign up for an account and how does the tutorial work and things like that. And I'd be happy to give away some licenses if you guys can help me test out Alpha Anywhere. If you're interested, please send an email to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. And I would work with you on the phone. I don't know, it takes 25, 30 minutes, something like that. We usually do it over Skype. And I just, we basically just go through the onboarding process and I just watch you follow the directions and see if we've done a good enough job that you can figure it out yourself. So if you're interested in participating in that, I'd really like to hear from you. So send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com and I'll be passing out some multi-seat 1-year licenses. Thanks very much. Dion, how's it going on your end?
Well, not great. So I'll show you. What is that I think I had a temporary license for this. This is Adobe Acrobat Cloud or something like that. So, but I can show part of it. So let me go ahead and
or
go
even
back
if we just explain in general terms.
Here there. So the first step is, let's say someone gave you just a printed, like a PNG or JPEG or something like that. So what I can do is I can create a PDF online, and this actually anybody can do. So what it does is you select a file to convert it, and you pick a file. So let me go ahead and pick a file here called exampleform.jpg. Okay, and say I convert it to this. So what it's going to do is just take that JPEG and convert that to a PDF. And now we can open that form. Now, if you'll notice in here, right here, you can see that it's just taken that image and put it behind the scenes here. So that's all nice and good, but you notice we want to have fields right here from that standpoint here. So in this tool is a tool called Prepare Form. And again, I apologize, I don't have that built into it. Let's see, maybe, yeah, you notice it's saying add versus open kind of thing. So I'm just not logged in with the right credentials. But if you say prepared form, then what happens is you get the ability to go in and just drag and drop a form field, and then in that form field, you give it a field name. So you just go through there and you go like this, you drag and drop it, and you're good to go. But there is another more powerful thing that's built into it, is that when I click prepare form here, the cool thing is it will automatically look at this and it will auto create fields where it thinks they are. So it's smart enough to say, oh, there's a text and then an underline. That must be a form. So it'll actually literally create that field right here. Give it some generic name. And then all you have to do is go double click on that field and change the name. And so therefore you can actually, instead of having to spend 2 hours going like this, 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 then going into each one and giving it a name, when you prepare the form using Adobe's tool, it will actually create those fields for you. The one thing you do, you can live with those field names. You know, they're just going to guess it. They sometimes, I think they're even smart enough now to apply some OCR to kind of say, oh, that's brand. But you may want to go in and say brand or reference number, service contract, etc. So there's a little cleanup. But you can take a job that would have normally taken, 20, 30 minutes and take it down to about 5 minutes, because all you're doing is just editing the field names and maybe deleting something that doesn't make sense or adjusting it from there. And that's using something called Adobe Acrobat DC, which is from Adobe. You can buy a subscription. It's like $20 a month or something like that and have available. But there are third-party tools that do this also. So Acrobat or Adobe's not the only one. There are other tools that you can buy to do the same deal. In fact, there are certain online tools where you can upload an image or like a JPEG to a web browser, and it will convert it into a PDF and also try and do the field stuff. But I found this was really easy, and I apologize, I just don't have my right login count for some reason that has these tools enabled that I was able to do it. But then once you have that done, this is what you end up getting out the back end, something that looks like this, where you'll notice that this is a form fill. So, these are my fields in here. And so I could literally use Adobe PDF, the viewer to fill it out. You can send it to someone. It's got this capability here. But then I can also edit this PDF. Yeah, so I just don't have the right version kicked in here. That would just then on the right-hand side, when I click on this field, you can say, for instance, what's the name of the field, what's the type of the field, and some other stuff. The original vision I had was that when you created this name, you would say test_text_required. And then that would be the name of this field. And then what I could do is then when I read that field, I could say, oh, parse this into, oh, the name of the field is test, the type of field is text, and oh, it's required. But after a little while, I realized there was about 8 different metadata things I wanted to keep with it. Like if I said this was a list field, let's take an example. Let's say this motor type here, I wanted it to be a button field. So I'd say test button. Then I had to put behind here, I go, single phase, upper bar, double phase. And I thought, oh yeah, okay, I'll take it as a button and everything. But it got to be such a nightmare to, and if I misspell something, like if I go, oh, I screw that up, then it would barf. So what I ended up doing is just saying, you know what, let's just grab the field name, call it a day, and we'll call this, manufacturer. So when I'm building this in Adobe, I create manufacturer and I create test, or let's say call it type. And then I just put that into a database and then use metadata, just use a grid to have like a drop down next to each field saying, what's the data type and what's the other information it needs. Boom, boom, boom. It turned out to be from a process. You spent less time here. You just laid out the fields where they're at, give them the right names, boom, put them into Alpha and do the rest of it from that standpoint there. So that's how we ended up doing it. And it turned out to be just much simpler because anyway, you always find new things you can do with metadata to make the overall process. Like in fact, we don't have this implemented yet, but if I go back to my presentation real quick, you'll notice that I have in here, cool, paging. I want to group a set of fields together. So what I could do is in my metadata, I could tell it it's part of group A, B, C, or whatever the group is. And when, again, I create this, everything right now, everything's on a single page. It's just boom, boom, boom. Now I can actually insert a page that will do that automatically. So now it even makes it easier to fill these things out. Lots of things you can do with it that kind of add that metadata. And essentially, to be honest, I'm kind of replicating the TransForm form builder a little bit, but it turns out to be much faster because you're using a grid interface. And again, down the road, I'll show you how all those pieces work together and show from there. And if you're at again, a reason for you to come visit us at the fabulous B Hotel, be our guest there, and I'll glad to walk you through it face to face and show you more of the details. So Dave, I hope that gave a little bit more understanding of how I was using the Adobe system to auto-generate the fields and do that. And what's great is this was actually an example of this. This was literally auto-generated by Adobe Acrobat. It understood and put all these fields, including creating fields for each line of this here. And then all I had to do was go into each of these fields and modify the name of it, and I was done. I mean, it was pretty amazing. They have some pretty amazing OCR intelligence built into it. Obviously, Adobe's a multi-billion-dollar company. And it was crazy when I did it. I was like, oh, that's so cool. That saves me so much time.
Very cool. Thanks very much. All right, so we have a few questions. Let's see. Oh, just another quick TransForm licensing question about seats. Yes, seats mean both users and developers, and you can be both. So if you have a 3-user license, that means you can have 3 developers, 3 users, 3 people who are users and developers. Doesn't make any difference. Here's a question. Someone is interested in doing an export to Excel from a list in a UX, but they actually want to be able to take 2 lists in the UX and combine it onto one spreadsheet. I was wondering if you could talk in general terms how you might go about doing something like that. So
okay,
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So the trick, and this is actually a different client came up on this, so you have 2 lists and you want to kind of combine them into a single Excel output point. So I've got list A. Let's go ahead and put in list A and list B. And I'm going to assume there's somewhat the same data. So I'm just going to do static here.
Right.
And let's go, where's my static data? And I'll just use the sample data. Okay. Oops, I got to get my list properties. So I can do that. And then I'll have my second list. Put in my data there. Okay, and my list layout here. Okay, now if I go ahead and do my working preview, you'll see I have my 2 lists here. Okay, now what I could do is I could create a third list. So I'm going to go ahead and create a third list. And we'll go, actually, I'll just do it as a third list here. It's going to require a little scripting, but nothing big. So I'll go ahead and go in here. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to populate the data. Okay, but I'm going to get rid of my data. So this is empty, but it's kind of a combination. I can go to my list layout. My list layout, go like this. Okay. Now we'll notice here. So now I've got 2 lists and a third list. And actually, let's go ahead and put them side by side so don't have to deal with that. Now, there's a really cool capability built into Alpha, and actually it's Action JavaScript, which we'll start with, but then that behind the scenes, you can use that. I'm going to go button here, and I'm going to add a new action. Okay, so I'm adding a button in here. What I want to do is move an item from list A into list 3. So I'm going to go ahead, and it's a list control action. So I added a button, I double-clicked on it, and I brought this up here. So I'm going to go list control actions. The action I want is I want to, and you can see you got a ton of them here. I want to move all roles from one list into another list. Check that out. Okay, so the list ID here is list A, and I want to put them in list 3. Dun, 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 dun. Cool. So I got this now. Aha. So I moved those rows in there. You may not want to move them. There's a way to copy them too. So let me go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this control here. And I'm going to move it down. And in this one, what I want to do is, let's see, is there a move? Yeah, I don't like the move, by the way, and I'll come back to talk about that. And what from list B. So now I can go in here. I'll have to talk someone about copy versus just move. So notice now I've took both of those. Now they're all in here. Notice they're duplicate. And then I can do my export from Excel from this list right here, which, by the way, if I go and add another button here, there is a button in here under the list control actions, which is export list data to Excel ASCII from list 3. You can set some settings how you want to do it. And now I can take the list here. Now, I'm going to go in here and I want to show you the JavaScript. Well, there's a built-in one here called list all rows, or list move all rows. Now, the problem you may have is you may not want to actually move those records out of those lists. You may be doing other things with them. That said, I'm going to go ahead and let me go ahead and close this real quick. I'm going to go into text mode and notice it copied there. So if I wanted to actually combine both those buttons, I could just copy and paste these here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for I'm going to create a method here. So down below here, this is my JavaScript here. Here's my insert UX component method. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go copy. I wonder if there's a copy function. Okay, no. Append. Okay, so there's one called add table row. So what you can do, or add table rows bulk. And so what I'd probably do is use that one. And the idea is, let's see, list add table rows. So I just give you an idea is what I would do is I would get my first list here, and this is going to be pseudocode, so bear with me, and I'll paste it into there. So I'm going to get my control, which is my list A. Then I'm going to go underscore data is equal to dialog object, or no, it's object dot get. What is it? There's a function in here to get the data from this list object. And then what I can do is I can then go list rows bulk. Then I get my list C, or list 3. Okay. And then I can say list object 3, this, and then I can go here, go right here, and then data right here. Now, the tricky part is I need to get the data from this list object. Hold on a second here. What is that? Let's see. Hold on one second, everybody. I really want to give them the item, what this is here. So I'll go alpha 5 list get data. So I'm going there and just doing a quick search on my online there. Almost there. Properties, okay. Almost there, so bear with me. There's the list control. There are the, I'm looking for the functions. well, I don't want to waste a whole lot of time here. Methods.
But, well, in general terms, you're basically pulling the data out of each of the lists, or copying out of each of the lists, I guess, retrieving it.
Yeah, I guess I'm going into the weeds a little bit there.
And putting it into a third list, though, is the deal, right? And then
Yeah.
using the third list to do the export. So then the question, the follow-up question to that is, okay, that's cool, but I don't want my users to see this third list because that will be very confusing. How would you make it so that they wouldn't see it?
Oh, well, in that case, what you would do is just take your third list, take a container, and insert a container around it. And in that list, or put it on a different panel card, do a show height equals 1 equals 0 over here on the right. And this list will be in the interface, but it's hidden from the user. And then you can, but you'll still be able to interact with that list through code and through buttons.
You can still get to it through code.
JavaScript.
See it on the screen. Yeah, excellent. Oh, very cool.
Exactly. Yeah. So I apologize I didn't have that, but the idea, what you want to do is basically, there's a way you can pull the data out of one list with a little piece of action JavaScript or a JavaScript. And then what's cool is then you can then populate this third list with it. Then you do the same thing. So it's a little piece of JavaScript that populates that third list. And then you trigger off that list the actual generation of the Excel spreadsheet or CSV file that you're going to export out.
Cool.
So I hope that's helpful enough. And the only trick is that you can get the list object data. There's just a JavaScript command that allows you to do that in the system. So I'd have to look that up real quick.
In the meantime, we may talk to our development team and ask about adding a new action JavaScript action that instead of move would let you do it.
So
because that seems like pretty helpful.
Yeah, because there's a lot of times, and here's the thing that's important, and just to let everybody know from there is that we have the action name. Let me see, maybe I just missed it. List detail, scroll, populate current row in a list. That populates the data in the field.
That's just one.
Yeah, it's just move here from there. So yeah, copy would be kind of cool because then you don't have to worry about it, just copy it. When you do actually use action JavaScript or when you use JavaScript, very important. And I'm going to just give you a heads up just in case you are working on this or you're doing a little bit more detail there. There is append rows, which is called append rows data. And the important thing is that this is if you don't care about this other list being updatable. So most likely for your use case, sir, you would use append rows. So you'd grab the data from one and pull it to the others, because then it would just append these list A items to this list 3. If you want to actually then take the data that's put in this list and sync it back to the server, like let's say you're creating a third master list, you want to use add table row, because when you do add table row, what will happen is it tells this list, oh, you're dirty, here's a new record, start tracking it, and when you synchronize it back in. If you use append rows, it will definitely show up in the list on the user interface, but when you say sync, it's going to not even know those rows exist. They're sort of like, call it bookkeeping that goes on when you do an add table row, that then it adds it to this list and sets all those figures to say, oh, when I go to sync, it knows these are new rows that need to be inserted into the database. So just be careful. Append rows and add table rows are definitely two things. You'll use append rows because you're going to just delete the results in this list after you export it. You don't care about it, but other people may be doing things like that.
Excellent. Just a quick question back to the Adobe Forms, and that is sort of what's the difference between, say, using the Adobe Form Creator and using Alpha Absolute Positioning? Like, sort of how do these compare and contrast, these two technologies?
Gotcha. They're very similar. Now, the trick with, so very similar. The real difference is that for you to use an absolute layout, someone has to have the alpha development environment, and they have to know how to open up a UX, add a UX. And so what we found in this business process here is that they literally want an administrator to do this kind of front end work of collecting the forms, creating them editable, and therefore what they could do is using this method, they could use it, they could do that. The other benefit was the export of this. They wanted to deliver it back as a filled PDF. So it just made sense to kind of push the process here. It's very similar because what I would do is just turn the form into a PNG and then upload it into Alpha and be able to do that from there. So it's really kind of similar methodologies, but it turned out for their business process, it made more sense. The other thing that was nice was that auto generation of fields. We don't have that in
right, the OCR
absolute layout.
Yep.
Yeah, that's just not in there in terms of that capability.
Cool.
And probably never will now that we know how to do this.
Right, sure, but it has other uses as well. That's right. It is definitely
yes,
a
indeed.
tool of the alpha absolute positioning, which brings me sort of my next sort of request, and that is, can you just briefly go over alpha absolute positioning? Because there are a couple people here I know who are not quite sure what it is we're talking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I have one already exists.
Excellent.
Okay. So the idea behind absolute positioning is this, is that normally when you're laying out your forms, you're using what's called a declarative form structure, meaning you're setting up our things next to each other, behind each other, etc. But we found for certain applications, that's just, if you want to actually map it to a form that you already have, that's just too cumbersome to do it. So there's a special type of container. In fact, if I click here to containers, click add container, there is a absolute layout container. Now, the cool thing about the absolute layout container is that once you add that container, you put the fields you want inside that container. And you can also associate in that container a background image. So in this case, an insurance form. So now, once I've set up my fields I want to be on my form, I've set up my container and I've set up my background image, I'm going to click here where it says absolute positions for control. And you'll notice now it shows me a user interface here, which has those fields that were inside my container. And here is my image. And now what I can do is literally pixel perfect layout, move stuff around much like you would do with what you see is what you get. And you don't have to do this with a image behind it. You can just use it to lay out your form on the screen. It doesn't really matter. In fact, let me show you an example of that just from scratch. So let's go ahead and create a new UX here. How much time do I have? Good, I've got plenty of time for this. So I'm going to go to new UX, and this is our form technology. So I'm going to add a bunch of text boxes. First name, last name, middle, initial, phone number, and fax. Okay. So if I go ahead and put those on my UX and I run my UX, this is what it's going to look like. It's just going to use first name, last name, middle name, etc. So I got a form I can fill this data out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these by double clicking on them. I'm going to go over here to containers and I'm going to insert a container around these fields. And with all the different container types, I'm going to select absolute layout. And by the way, if you're ever curious, here's explain the different types. It tells you exactly what it works and what they do. And in fact, there's a bunch of videos that show you how to do it. So look for these blue links, always good to have there. Okay, so now I have an absolute layout. Now that I have that, I can go over here to absolute positions. And now what I can do is here's my form that's going to be shown on the screen. So this is kind of, think of it as my view. Then I can click first name and I can go ahead and put in the field there. Last name, middle initial, phone number. Let's say I want to put that over here, and fax. And if I want to move these around, you'll notice they have like the little guidelines and stuff like that. It's pretty nice. So I can go middle initial. They kind of sync up, they match and stuff. So it's really pretty nice. Good to go. I click OK, do my work in preview. And now my form looks like this. Now you can see that I don't have any text around them. So that's part of the work. All I need to do is I can go in here and put in first name, because all we're showing is really the control itself. I can go back in here and then I can go in here and I'm going to take all these here. Let's go ahead and take this. let's see, select all and move them over a little bit. Then I'm going to take here and I'm going to put that static text over here. Okay, click OK, do my working preview, and there's my first name. And I can type in my information there, type in my information, etc. So as you can see, I can make it a pixel perfect presentation in my system here. And what I would probably do is, instead of using alpha, it depends, I'm going to go ahead and select a different, just the GR blue. And you can see that it takes the CSS, and when it generates this, yeah, depends on the type of film. But notice now, I can, instead of like having to, I can just go in there and say, you know what, I don't want that layout that way. I want to go in here, and what I want to do is go ahead and put in, I want to take this phone number and fax, and I'd like those to be down over here, or you know what, I want them lined right here. So we'll go ahead and do that. Go into my working preview. And so you can do what you see is what you get kind of layout with Alpha. And what happens is when Alpha displays this in the web browser, and I'm going to go ahead and do a preview of this right now, it basically, there's like a div, and it does absolute positioning with the div. It uses some HTML tricks to show it on the screen the way you want it. In certain situations. Now, the real cool benefit is that if I go back in here, and this is what I showed you a little bit before, is that if I already have a form, I can click here where it says has background image, click there, select my background image, and I believe I already have an image here. Let's see, I think I have an image here. Yeah, let's go ahead. Well, that's not a very interesting looking image. So I've uploaded a PNG of my form. There it is, my insurance form. Now, when I go in to edit this, notice it's showing my form, and I can say, oh, first name needs to go right here. Middle initial is right here. Last name is right here. Click OK, save that, or actually do a preview of it. And I haven't fully laid it out correctly, but you'll notice now it shows the background image, and I go, you know, John C. Doe. I have to set the tab and things like that to do that there. One other thing that's cool built in, another cool tool, is there is an action JavaScript that says, take an absolute layout and create a PDF of it. Let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. So there's built in, what's another neat thing is that they can literally fill out this form on the screen. And by the way, you can use things like drop downs. I didn't set my forms right. And I click PDF form, and look what happens. Behind the scenes, it calls the server, it generates a PDF, creates a PDF, and it generates an output PDF. Oh, this didn't look right. Oh, see, it's got my text in there. I didn't do the formatting correctly, but it basically merges my fields with the PDF behind it and creates a PDF. And so literally I could do sort of what I did with the other. Again, back to the original question, for them, it was just easier for someone to use this to do the development of forms and use their built-in tools than doing it from there. And they actually looked at using absolute layout there, but they realized that they gained a little bit, but not that full explosive capability that you could with Alpha, or by using TransForm for the field interface, and then using Adobe Acrobat editor for the front end kind of form field creation extraction.
Great.
So thank you. That was a great question. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, Dion, we've come to the end of our time, and I want to thank every one of you. I know it went fast. Anyway, thanks everyone who asked questions. Thanks everyone who showed up, and thank you, Dion, for presenting. We are going to take a couple of weeks off. Next week, we'll be preparing for DevCon. The following week is DevCon, and we will see you probably the week right after that. So hope to see a lot of you down in Florida in a couple weeks. Take care and goodbye.